Again? They were just here last month. My voice trembled with a mix of anger and disbelief as I confronted Martin, my husband of 3 years. Martin, with his typical dismissive wave, dropped his briefcase by the door. "Evelyn, they're my parents. They want to see Lily, and it's only for a couple of weeks." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about his parents visiting. It was about respect, or the lack thereof. Martin had a habit of making decisions without consulting me, treating me more like a tenant than his wife. "Evelyn, you're overreacting," Martin said, his tone laced with condescension as he walked past me. "Just make sure the guest room is ready." I stood there, frozen, as he dismissed my feelings with such ease. It was always the same pattern. His parents, Miriam and Gerald, would arrive, turning our home upside down, leaving me to cater to their every whim, while Martin buried himself in work, conveniently absent. As I prepared the guest room, my mind raced with resentment. I thought back to the days before we were married, when Martin was considerate and kind. But since Lily's birth and our move to the suburbs, he had become increasingly domineering and detached. The next morning, I heard the familiar rumble of Miriam and Gerald's car in the driveway. I plastered a smile on my face as I opened the door. "Good morning, Miriam. Geraldcom." "Ah, there she is, our lovely daughter-in-law," Miriam exclaimed, brushing past me to fuss over Lily, who clung to my leg, eyeing her grandparents warily. Gerald followed, carrying their bags. "We're so happy to be here. Where should we put these?" "Just in the guest room, thank you," I replied, my smile straining. The first few days passed in a blur of cooking, cleaning, and forced pleasantries. Martin came home late each night, barely acknowledging me or his parents. I felt invisible in my own home. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Gerald called out from the living room. "Evelyn, where's the remote? The news is about to start." "It's right there on the coffee table, Gerald," I replied, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. Miriam chimed in. "Evelyn, dear, could you bring us some tea? Gerald loves your tea." Suppressing a sigh, I nodded and headed to the kitchen. As the water boiled, I could hear them laughing and chatting in the living room, a stark contrast to the silence that filled the rest of the house. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I found myself sitting in the dark kitchen, a cup of untouched tea in my hands. Tears streamed down my face as I realized how lonely and unappreciated I felt. I missed the partnership I thought I had with Martin, the love that seemed to have evaporated since Lily's arrival. I wiped away my tears, a resolve building within me. I couldn't continue living like this, invisible and unheard. I needed to find a way to make Martin see me, to acknowledge my feelings. But deep down, I feared that the man I had married was gone, replaced by this cold, indifferent stranger. As I headed to bed, I made a silent vow to myself. I wouldn't let this go on any longer. I had to find my voice again, for my sake and for Lily's. The days turned into a monotonous blur with Miriam and Gerald's presence in the house. Their demands grew each day, yet Martin remained oblivious to the mounting pressure on me. I felt like a puppet, dancing to their every whim, my own needs and desires shoved aside. One particularly grueling evening, as I cleared the dinner plates while everyone else lounged in the living room, Martin's voice sliced through the air. "Evelyn, did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning?" I paused, the weight of the plates heavy in my hands. "No, Martin, I couldn't. I had to take Lily to her doctor's appointment today." A huff of annoyance came from him. "You could have gone after that. I needed that suit for tomorrow." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Miriam and Gerald exchanged glances, an unspoken judgment passing between them. I felt a surge of anger, but I bit back my retort. This wasn't the time. The next morning, I found Martin in the kitchen, his demeanor icy. "We need to talk about your attitude, Evelyn," he began, his tone patronizing. "My attitude?" I echoed, incredulity lacing my voice. "Yes, you're not being accommodating enough to my parents. They've noticed it too." "It's embarrassing," he said, fixing me with a cold stare. I felt a rush of frustration. "Martin, I'm doing everything I can. I'm taking care of Lily, the house, your parents." He cut me off with a wave of his hand. "That's what you're supposed to do. You're the woman of the house. My parents shouldn't feel unwelcome." His words stung, a stark reminder of how little he valued my efforts. I wanted to scream, to make him see how unfair this was, but I knew it would only fall on deaf ears. As the days passed, my resolve hardened. I couldn't let Martin and his parents treat me like this any longer. I began to plan, to think of ways to stand up for myself, to reclaim my dignity. The opportunity came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while Martin was at work and Miriam and Gerald were napping, I received a phone call from my old friend Laura. "Evelyn, how have you been? I feel like it's been ages since we last talked." Laura's voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Laura, it's so good to hear your voice," I replied, my voice heavy with emotion. We talked about everything and nothing, and for a brief moment I felt like my old self again. Then Laura's tone shifted. "Evelyn, there's something I need to tell you. It's about Martin." My heart skipped a beat. "What about him?" "I saw him the other day with someone. A woman. They seemed close. More than just colleagues." The room spun around me as Laura's words sank in. A sickening feeling settled in my stomach. Could Martin be having an affair? "I'm sorry, Evelyn. I thought you should know," Laura added softly. The call ended, but her words echoed in my mind. The pieces began to fall into place. The late nights, the detached behavior, the lack of intimacy. I was faced with a harsh truth. My marriage was a sham, and I had been living in a fool's paradise. But I wasn't going to be the victim any longer. I would confront Martin, demand the truth, and if he was indeed betraying me, I would make him pay for every tear, every moment of pain he had caused me. That night, I lay in bed, my mind racing with plans of confrontation and revenge. I would no longer be the silent, suffering wife. It was time for Martin to see the strength he had underestimated in me. The days following Laura's revelation were a tempest of emotions. I observed Martin with a new lens, each of his dismissive remarks and arrogant gestures fueling my growing resentment. The man I once loved had become a stranger, his facade now transparent to my scrutinizing eyes. One evening, as I prepared Lily's dinner, Martin sauntered into the kitchen. "Evelyn, my parents are thinking of extending their stay. You don't mind, do you?" His question, so casually delivered, was a clear testament to his disregard for my feelings. "Extend their stay?" I repeated, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Martin, don't you think they've stayed long enough?" Martin's face hardened. "What's that supposed to mean? They're my parents. You should be more welcoming." I turned to face him, my frustration reaching its boiling point. "Welcoming?" "Martin, I've been nothing but accommodating. But this is our home, too. I have a say in this." He scoffed. "Your say? Look, Evelyn, you're the wife. It's your duty to take care of the household. My parents staying here shouldn't be an issue." His words struck a nerve. "Duty? Is that all I am to you? A caretaker?" Martin's eyes narrowed. "Don't start with this nonsense, Evelyn. You're being irrational." "Irrational?" I could feel my voice rising, the pent-up anger and hurt pouring out. "I'm the one being irrational? What about your late nights, your secret rendezvous? Are those rational?" For a moment, Martin seemed taken aback, but he quickly regained his composure. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Martin. I know about the other woman. Laura saw you." His face went pale, then flushed with anger. "You're spying on me now? How dare you?" "I'm not spying. I'm opening my eyes to the truth. The truth you've been hiding from me," I shot back, my resolve strengthening. Martin took a step closer, his voice low and menacing. "Listen, Evelyn, you better watch your tone. You have no idea what you're talking about." But I wasn't intimidated. "No, Martin, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I won't stand for this any longer." He scoffed, turning to leave the kitchen. "Do what you want, just make sure my parents are comfortable." That night, after Martin had retreated to his den and Miriam and Gerald had retired to their room, I sat alone in the living room. The house was silent, but my mind was a cacophony of thoughts. I realized then that my marriage was beyond salvaging. Martin had not only betrayed me, but had also devalued me, treating me as nothing more than a servant in my own home. It was time for me to take a stand, to reclaim my life. I would no longer be a victim of Martin's arrogance and infidelity. I would gather evidence of his affair, consult a lawyer, and prepare for a divorce. But it wouldn't end there. Martin would have to face the consequences of his actions. I would ensure that he paid for the pain he had caused me, both emotionally and legally. As I lay in bed that night, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan not just for my escape, but for my retribution. Martin and his parents would soon learn that I was not a woman to be trifled with. The following days were a careful dance of deception and planning. I maintained a semblance of normalcy, all the while gathering evidence of Martin's infidelity. Laura had been right. A few discreet inquiries revealed Martin's secret meetings with a woman named Rachel, a colleague from his office. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table with his parents, Martin announced, "I might need to go on a business trip next weekend." A business trip? The perfect alibi for his affair. I looked at him, my expression neutral, but inside, a storm was brewing. "That sounds important, Martin. I hope it goes well," I said, my voice laced with hidden irony. Miriam chimed in, oblivious to the undercurrents. "Oh, Martin works so hard. Evelyn, you should be proud of such a diligent husband." I forced a smile, my resolve hardening. "Yes, I'm very proud." The next day, while Martin was at work and his parents were out shopping, I met with a lawyer. I laid out everything, the infidelity, the emotional neglect, the way Martin and his parents treated me. The lawyer listened intently, offering advice and outlining the next steps. "You have a strong case, Evelyn, especially with the evidence of the affair," he said, his tone professional yet sympathetic. I nodded, a sense of empowerment growing within me. "Thank you. I want to proceed with this as soon as possible." That night, I lay in bed, the plan crystallizing in my mind. I would confront Martin, but not yet. First, I would ensure everything was in place for the divorce. I wanted him to feel the full impact of his actions, to realize he couldn't just discard me like an old piece of furniture. The day of reckoning came sooner than expected. On Friday, as Martin prepared for his supposed business trip, I found the proof I needed, a receipt for a romantic getaway at a luxury resort, tucked carelessly in his coat pocket. That evening, with Martin's parents in the living room and Lily asleep, I confronted him. "Going on a business trip, Martin, or should I say a romantic getaway with Rachel?" Martin froze, the color draining from his face. "Evelyn, how did you?" I waved the receipt in front of him. "You're not as clever as you think, Martin. I know everything." For a moment he seemed lost for words. Then his expression hardened. "You've been snooping around, haven't you? You're pathetic." "Pathetic?" The word echoed in my mind, fueling my anger. "No, Martin. What's pathetic is you sneaking around, betraying your family. But I'm done playing the dutiful wife. I'm filing for divorce." Martin's eyes widened in shock. "Divorce? You can't do that. You're nothing without me." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "No, Martin, it's you who will be nothing without me. I have evidence of your affair. I'll make sure you pay for what you've done." For a moment, he looked defeated, but then his arrogance returned. "You think you can win against me? I'll fight you every step of the way." I smiled, a cold, determined smile. "Bring it on, Martin. You'll see just how strong I can be." As I left the room, Martin's stunned silence was a victory in itself. But this was just the beginning. The real battle was about to start. The days following my confrontation with Martin were a whirlwind of legal preparations and silent battles. Martin's demeanor had shifted. He oscillated between anger and a feigned indifference, but I could see the underlying panic in his eyes. The weekend arrived, and with it, an unexpected development. Martin's parents decided to extend their stay, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly calm household. One afternoon, as I was tending to Lily in the living room, Martin and his parents cornered me. "Evelyn, we need to talk about your behavior," Martin began, his voice dripping with disdain. Miriam nodded in agreement. "Yes, dear. We've noticed you've been quite distant and cold. It's not becoming of a wife and mother." Gerald added, "Martin has been nothing but a good husband. You should appreciate him more." Their words were like daggers, but I stood my ground. Appreciate him? For what exactly? For his lies? His affair? Martin's face turned red with anger. "Don't bring that up in front of my parents." "Why not, Martin? They should know the kind of son they've raised," I shot back, my voice firm. Miriam gasped. "An affair? Martin, is this true?" Before Martin could respond, I continued, "Yes, it's true, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore. I've filed for divorce." The room fell into a stunned silence. Martin looked at me, his eyes full of malice. "You'll regret this, Evelyn. You're nothing without me." I met his gaze, unwavering. "No, Martin, I regret the years I spent tolerating your arrogance and disrespect. I'm taking Lily and I'm leaving." Martin's parents started to protest, but I didn't let them. "This is between Martin and me. You've overstayed your welcome. It's time for you to leave." As I packed my bags, I could hear the muffled arguments in the background, Martin trying to explain himself to his incredulous parents. I felt a surge of satisfaction, knowing that his perfect image was shattered. With Lily in my arms, I walked out of the house that had become my prison. I didn't look back. I was finally free from Martin's shadow, ready to start anew. As I drove to my parents' house, I thought about the future. It wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to rebuild my life, for Lily and for myself. Martin and his parents would learn that I was not a woman to be underestimated. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and emotional upheaval. Despite Martin's attempts to intimidate me, I stood strong. The evidence of his affair was undeniable, and soon the divorce proceedings were in my favor. The day the divorce was finalized, I felt a mix of relief and triumph. I had stood up to Martin and his oppressive family, and I had won. But my revenge didn't end there. Martin's affair had not only cost him his marriage, but also his reputation. His colleagues and friends learned of his indiscretions, and his once untouchable status crumbled. As for his parents, they were left to grapple with the reality of their son's actions. Their attempts to reach out to me were met with silence. They had lost a daughter-in-law who had once cared for them, all because of their blind support for Martin. I had emerged from this ordeal stronger and more resilient. I had fought for my dignity and won. And as I looked at Lily, playing happily in her grandmother's arms, I knew that I had made the right decision. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. I had closed a painful chapter in my life, and a new one was just beginning. In the months following the divorce, my life underwent a transformation. The chains of a loveless marriage had been broken, and in their place, I found a newfound sense of freedom and self-worth. With Lily by my side, I started to rebuild our lives, piece by piece. One day, as Lily played in the garden of my parents' home, I received a phone call that marked the final chapter in my saga with Martin. It was Laura, her voice a mix of shock and concern. "Evelyn, have you heard about Martin?" "No. What happened?" I asked, a sense of foreboding settling over me. "He's lost his job. After the divorce and the affair came to light, his company let him go. And it gets worse. He's been struggling financially. The alimony, the legal fees, it's all caught up with him." I paused, absorbing the news. A part of me felt a pang of vindication, but it was overshadowed by a sobering realization of the consequences of his actions. "And his parents?" I found myself asking. "They're in a tough spot, too," Laura continued. "Without Martin's support, they've had to downsize. It seems they're finally understanding the repercussions of their behavior." I ended the call with a heavy heart. Despite everything Martin had put me through, I found no joy in his downfall. It was a stark reminder of how one's actions could have far-reaching consequences. In the weeks that followed, I focused on Lily and our new life. We spent our days surrounded by the love and support of my parents, who had welcomed us with open arms. One afternoon, as I watched Lily play, my mother sat beside me. "Evelyn, you've grown so much through all of this. You're strong, my dear, stronger than you ever realized." I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Thanks, Mom. It's been a hard road, but I've learned a lot about myself." "And Lily is thriving," she added, watching her granddaughter with a tender gaze. "She's happy, and that's what matters most." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the garden, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for my dignity, it had all led to this moment of peace and contentment. I knew there would be challenges ahead, and questions from Lily about her father as she grew older. I would face them head-on, with honesty and strength. For now, I was content in the knowledge that I had stood up for myself and my daughter, and we had emerged stronger for it. I looked at Lily, her laughter ringing through the air, and I felt a surge of hope. Our future was unwritten, a blank canvas ready to be filled with new memories and experiences. And for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to seeing what each new day would bring.